What was the main takeaway from Lucas? I'm curious.
What I'd say people do wrong the most with inventory management is they try to start too much with the big picture or start too much with too much technology and work backwards. And we would rather take care of the customer more than take care of our inventory level on those things. Every time something's out of the norm, that's always where there's defects and waste. And so that spreadsheet has really helped that part of our inventory out and eliminating waste and defects from those big orders that we get. We're always teaching that one of the most important philosophies of lean is that not just you need to do lean, you need to do lean with your suppliers. So one of the things that we were able to do that really helped with the container shortage was, then the last one is the hardest one to do, is bring manufacturing home. But that's the whole point of lean, is you start out at a start point and you know, I'm going to be able to drop like 10% off my cost every year on this because I'm going to keep improving the way that I'm making it. I always say that lack of communication is the ninth deadly sin of waste. If you're not communicating clearly, it creates all the other waste, right?
Hey there. I started this channel with one goal: to help people grow people. But here's the thing, growth isn't a solo journey.
The best
leaders,
teams, and businesses
thrive because
they learn
and grow
together.
And that's what we're building here. So if that sounds like something worth being a part of, hit subscribe, because the more of us there are, the more we can invest in learning together. Let's grow together.
Well, welcome everyone to this morning's Learning Club. Very excited to have this one. I've been working with Lucas for the last couple of weeks over this session and making sure we've got everyone's questions pre-submitted, and we're going to have lots of fun today. Lucas, thank you very much for joining us today in our Learning Club, all about solving our inventory problems from Ryan's fantastic book. Before we get started, Lucas, can you just quickly introduce yourself, please? And for those that might not know who you are or might not know your background, if you could give us a quick rundown, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Lucas. I have a manufacturing engineering degree from Western Washington University. And part of one of my senior classes, we were learning about lean manufacturing. So they took us to a local company that does lean manufacturing and got us a tour. And that was FastCap. And I was pretty blown away. So after college, I came and knocked on FastCap's door and said, hey, can I have a job? And they're like, we're not really hiring. I was like, well, you're a lean manufacturer. I'm an engineer. Let me just start out at the bottom, put me in production, get me in the door. I'm not working right now. I just graduated. If I find something better, maybe I'll jump ship in 6 months, but maybe I'll prove myself and work my way up. And that's what I did. So I've been at FastCap about just over 10 years now, actually, I think. Started out just in production, doing assembly, and worked up into our best fence area, which is running a whole assembly cell all by myself. And from there, I moved into production lead. So I was running all of the production cells and setting up processes, process videos, setting up build cells. And I've kind of worked my way through, I guess, every job in the company that I could, and tried to figure out how to work myself out of a job. So I've been through there. I've been through doing inventory, and I redid our whole inventory system. Spent about a year doing that. And these days I am in charge of the engineering department. We had kind of a mess at the beginning of COVID when bunch of people were all out sick for months at a time, and then all decided to quit together and realized that it wasn't being managed right. So I'm kind of redoing how everything's worked and managed back here at the moment. And who knows where I'll be at next, but that's my goal, is do it and then make it so easy that someone else can do it when it was a mess.
I love that mindset. That's brilliant. So, 10 years and done a lot of things. As you mentioned, COVID, and it sounds like you're the perfect person to be talking to about inventory if you've had to remodel the whole inventory system. What's changed between now and then throughout that 10 years, or even as you were doing the inventory management? What was the biggest change that you've seen?
I think just figuring out how to make systems work better for us. We're very much about keeping everything as simple as possible. And simple is great because it makes it so that it's really easy to train someone else to do it. You get into really complicated ERP systems. All of a sudden you onload someone new. It's 6 months of just teaching them how to do the computer system, right? But running just everything off just one physical Kanban card, while it's great, it has its downfalls and you run into problems. So figuring out different systems and nuances and kind of categorizing different SKUs into different categories and seeing what works best for each thing has been a big move forward, I think.
So how do you test that something is simple? You know, for yourself, you know, you think the way that you think and I think the way that I think. How do you know, or how do you keep testing the fact that the inventory management is as simple as it can be?
Well, our metric for whether something is simple enough or not is could a monkey do it? It's our joke. But really, no, it's we hire a couple new people every year, probably 2 to 3. And the idea is throw the newest person into something and give them the fastest training you can on the system and see how well they do. And that's also the best place to find improvements to your system because anything they do wrong, it's something that's not simple enough. And that's where you know to go improve. And you can always retrain and get them doing it right. But really, why not make the system simpler where it wasn't?
And so, like before we did this learning club, you sent through a synopsis of a quick overview of FastCap's current inventory management system. And can you just give us a quick rundown now of, for those that might have missed it, how do you manage your inventory in FastCap right now?
So for the most part, everything is run off a Kanban card. We have about 1,600 SKUs. Some are very, very high volume, and some are very low volume and everything in between. Capitally, we're very solvent, so we don't have to worry about being low on capital money as far as having too much inventory. But with the amount of SKUs we have and the space they take up, we do get very limited on physical space in our building. And so for some of our high volume, high moving items, we've had to move away from just you hit a reorder point and order up to your maximum quantity and move it into more of a blanket PO type situation where we're doing some forecasting and we do 6 months at a time. And we'll set out for the factory that we need this money sent on the first of this month for the next 6 months. And then we still have a backup physical Kanban card so that if during those 6 months something happens, sales explode on that item, we get down to a level where we're like, oh, we need to add to our blanket POs. So that's been a really big advantage as far as keeping our space down and keeping things coming with a little bit more flow.
We have some specific questions from those in the group anyway about the specific processes that you have. Before I hand over to the team members in the group, one of the questions I have is where do you start with an inventory management system? And the reason why I ask that is right now, where I work, in reading Ryan's book, he talks about you've got to have an engaged lean culture before you can start implementing Kanban. And I'm not quite there where I work. People don't really see the point in Kanban yet. But I am still interested in knowing, you've obviously engaged with a lot of people over the 10 years at FastCap. Where would you recommend someone to start if they want to revitalize their inventory management process?
Well, let me ask you a question first. Why do you think people don't see the point in the Kanban? Why are they not engaged with it?
So
have you ever had an employee go to the bathroom and come screaming at you, there's no toilet paper left in the bathroom? That's a great place to explain why the Kanban card might be important, don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. And I think what the battle we have at the moment is the lack of respect for inventory management, as in like toilet paper, for example, where the BB, there's no toilet paper, the cleaners will get that. That's sort of the mentality, the mindset that I battle with day to day. And that goes all the way through in our workshops. It might be, I'm out of this consumable product, it might be brake cleaner. I don't need to do anything about that because that's my boss's job to go on all of that. So that's sort of the bit of the bird's nest that I'm untangling and creating that lean culture. That's where it's starting.
I would say I think starting with Kanban cards on things like that is a great place to get people engaged. You start with them on the very simple consumables like that people really need to do their job. And you give them a Kanban card set on their toilet paper and a Kanban card set on their brake cleaner. And then if they're out of brake cleaner, your question to them is, why are you out of brake cleaner? You have this physical paper card. It was very simple. It said when you had 2 cans left, you had to give it to the buyer. The buyer only buys it if you gave it to them, right? So what happened? And then you get them more engaged in like, hey, I think I'm using more brake cleaner. I ran out this day, but I did the process right. I think I'll get this Kanban updated. And, sometimes there's a little bit of harsh love that goes along with that too. Like, hey, I gave you a Kanban for the brake cleaner. No one knows where the Kanban is. Now you can't do your job. Maybe you should go home for the day. We'll make you a new Kanban tomorrow. Right.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes down to stuff like toilet paper and tissue paper and stuff that people want, in the kitchen too, coffee pods, sugar, whatever people really want to have there and want to use, that's a great place to get them engaged with, hey, I need to do this or I'm not going to have the thing I want. It's my job, right?
I love it. So use it to fix what bugs you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, and it's a fair challenge. I appreciate that. Definitely going to use that. Again, you probably have provided that advice all the time to the others, including myself. What do you see people get wrong? Is it that they focus on things that might make sense in the bottom line and they don't fix what bugs them first? Like, where do you see people, mess up inventory management or implementing Kanban systems?
As far as implementing a Kanban system, I've never seen someone really do it wrong because I guess everyone's system is going to be different and it's all about jumping in, starting it, and seeing what works for you. And there is no wrong as long as you're doing it and you understand the basics of this is a reorder point. You have to set the Kanban at the reorder point. It has to go to someone and they have to order it, right? That's pretty simple. That's hard to get wrong. All the rest of it's figure out what works best for you. And like we've created a ton of different nuances over the years with different color dots and different things that different Kanbans can do. But that's all just part of figuring out what works in the growing experience. What I'd say people do wrong the most with inventory management is they try to start too much with the big picture or start too much with too much technology and work backwards. And once you've complicated it, it's really, really hard to simplify. So you have to start out as simple as you can and work your way up from there, I would say. And start out, like I said, with the little things. Start your Kanbans on your toilet paper and your paper towels, and then work up towards your important inventory items.
So is that sort of, when you say you had to go through and reinvent the inventory process, that management process at FastCap, is that how you approached that? You just started with the small things and worked your way through? Like, how did you go through that?
Yes, absolutely. So we already had a Kanban system that was working well, and we knew well how to use the Kanban system. But the problems we were having were more clerical error problems, I guess I would say. And so I figured out basically how to make the system work a lot more efficiently for the person doing it. And I implemented a lot of barcode systems and just went through the computer systems we were using and figured out different parts of them that we didn't know how to use right or could tweak to work in different ways for things we needed. And get first in, first out flowing properly, make it so pallets were never entered under the wrong part number. We had a major problem with that. It'd be like, well, we're out of this. Where the hell is it? Well, we better order another pallet right now. And then 2 days later, oh, hey guys, we have 3 pallets. They were just labeled as something else, right? So fixing a lot of those spaces for error and kind of trying to poke-yoke the system so that it's easy to do and you don't have to think too hard.
That answers my questions, Lucas. You've answered them very well, and you've given me a couple to internalize myself after the call. I want to move through to the team members on the group. So we've got 5 people lined up for questions. Matthew, if I could first throw to yourself.
Thanks, Lucas. My question for you is, the pandemic highlighted global supply chain challenges for businesses relying on critical parts from overseas suppliers. And how do you manage the trade-off between the lean philosophy of minimizing inventory and the need to maintain sufficient stock to avoid production disruptions caused by container delays?
And you mean without crying and getting depressed all the time?
Well, it's interesting. I've always wanted to ask this question because I have some partners in another business that really relied heavily on Europe and China during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And we all saw what happened with containers. But I observed that in obviously 2020 before I jumped on my lean journey. So now I'm like, how does it apply to an inventory heavy company that relies, so what should I say, inventory heavy, from containers from overseas, and you can't run out?
We definitely had a struggle with it. I have to be honest, it wasn't easy, especially the prices containers went to. It was, do we really want to pay that much to get that here right now, right? And so there's a couple things that we did that we found very helpful. And so one is we're always teaching that one of the most important philosophies of lean is that not just you need to do lean, you need to do lean with your suppliers. And it can be difficult when you're working with factories in China. But what we've done is we actually found a Chinese lady that we employ who's 100% an employee of FastCap. And I talk with her on WeChat all day, every day. And she goes to the factories and speaks to them in Chinese and helps them learn to work with us and learn some of our lean philosophies and make deals with us. So one of the things that we were able to do that really helped with the container shortage was working with our factories and saying, hey, we've been your customer for 10 years. We've worked with you. You know, sometimes you've sent us defects and we were willing to put in the labor to fix those as long as you got it right next batch. So like, can you do something for us here? Can you produce what we want produced, but set an area of your factory aside and keep it sitting there? And the day we say ship it, you ship it that day. And a number of our factories were willing to do that for us. And that really allowed us to shop containers, watch our inventory levels very carefully. You know, we're 3 weeks away on a container. Like, hey, we're down to 4.5 weeks. They're still expensive. I don't know. Like, hey, today, ship it. And they could book it and ship it. But that was very, very helpful. Some of our less popular items, we did have to kind of adjust our inventory levels and overstock them a little bit. We would rather take care of the customer more than take care of our inventory level on those things. And so not having it, especially when we were seeing everyone is not having stuff, seemed like a bad option to us. And it seemed better to overstock right now. If we're going to get it coming here, have it come here. And we know that in the next 4 years, we'll run through this inventory. But, you know, we couldn't do that with large volume items. Those are more for, you know, the smaller volume that don't take up as much space in the shop. Then the last one is the hardest one to do, is bring manufacturing home. And we definitely tried to do that on a number of items. We invested in a couple pieces of machinery, and you know, it's a big investment. And sometimes it's hard to get the item for the same price, even right at first, that you were getting it for. But that's the whole point of lean, is you start out at a start point and you know, I'm going to be able to drop like 10% off my cost every year on this because I'm going to keep improving the way that I'm making it. And so even if I've been getting it from China and right now I'm going to pay 35% more, I have some profit margin. I'm cutting out that container, that really high price, and we're learning something, and we're going to be able to take what we learn and apply it to more and more things. So it's really, really worth the investment to buy some of the machinery and figure out how you can bring some things home. And like one I'm really proud of, it's we make a product that's a guide for a router when you're flush trimming, that just stops you from dipping. Really simple product, but you know, made on a CNC lathe. And when we first bought the CNC lathe right after COVID and started making it, we were easily 40% higher than the cost we were getting from China. But we've got our processes down and we've been able to shop around, find better material suppliers, better materials, and we're now making it for, I think, 40% less than we were buying it for before COVID and making it in-house.
Thank you. Great answers there. You really, really brought it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Knocked it out of the park, Lucas. Thank you. The next question we have is from Tony.
Hi, Lucas. I had a question about what software you were using for shelf-based stock management for, you know, what value of stock you have on the shelf and those kind of things. And I understand from the info you set out that you're using the WASP system, but you mentioned you're also using a spreadsheet. Maybe you could tell us something about what that spreadsheet does for you.
We have a number of different spreadsheets we use, actually. We love using Excel because it's a free program. And if you really get into it, like, can actually do a lot of crazy stuff. I've gotten really into programming macros and stuff recently just to get it to do what we want to do. I don't know if you're familiar with how to do that, but using visual-based code. Yeah. Okay. So we have spreadsheets that track everything that we purchase on our Kanban card so we can see how often we're purchasing and in what quantities. And so it's a really clear visual system to go through. Every time we go to order, we can check that we don't need to upper raise or lower, I can't talk, our Kanban quantities just by looking at how often we're ordering and how many. So that's a great tool just for tracking that way. Then everything that we produce in-house is tracked on a similar spreadsheet, and we track it with people's initials and their build times on it. And so as we make improvements to processes, we're actually able to go back and pull graphs out and see how our build times are going up or down, and if our improvements are actually making sense or not. And in that, we make little notes on the cells, right where and date the improvements were made and what the improvements were. So we can see by improvement what's made a big difference and what hasn't. And that helps us figure out what we should implement on other ones. And then the most useful spreadsheet we have, it might not apply to you necessarily, but is for what we call anomaly tasks. So we have our what we call a grocery store. And so our goal is from the time we get an order to the time it gets shipped, our goal is 2 hours. We want it in a box in the truck within 2 hours of receiving the order. So when we receive an order, we take a cart and we go shopping. We push our cart through the grocery store and we take stuff off the shelf that's on the order, put it in the bin, bring it to the shipping table, box it up, and it goes in the truck. But sometimes you get a bigger order than what you have stocked in your grocery. It's an anomaly. It's not what you usually get. It's not what your Kanban levels are set for. And so for that, we have a spreadsheet that's shared on Teams through the whole company. And so from any computer in the building, you can go in and type in your UPC and your quantity and your order number as a deliver to, and it populates out. We have a macro that you hit and it prints out a physical anomaly Kanban card, goes on our production board, gets built, gets delivered, and it's made that whole system of, basically, we like to say that anomalies always lead to waste, right? Like when you're doing your standard process and everything's right, everything's right. Every time something's out of the norm, that's always where there's defects and waste. And so that spreadsheet has really helped that part of our inventory out and eliminating waste and defects from those big orders that we get.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm kind of interested in a really light solution for inventory management. I mean, we're a site-based contractor, so the inventory we have is just the things that we struggle to get hold of when we want, and things that we get custom made for us, like workwear and stuff, where, you know, it's great to be able to give an employee on his first day a set of overalls in the right size, and that kind of stuff is important, right? But not mission critical for us. And so, yeah, and accounting packages are wonderful, but they don't do stock management that well. So, yeah, just looking for really light alternatives to do, you know, to manage 50 items or something, you know, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, the WASP system that we use, it's really, really cheap, really simple, really easy to train on. And even if you don't want physical Kanban cards, it lets you set minimum, maximum, and reorder quantities. And when you hit a minimum quantity on anything, you can just set it to shoot you an email every day at noon or something with all those items that are below minimum, get them restocked, tells you the order quantity. So it's a really easy way to kind of start a Kanban system, and you can easily transition from that to a paper card or back and forth. And we actually use both. We use that minimum, maximum, and WASP as a backup for our physical Kanban card. And we set the minimum like one pallet lower than our Kanban card quantity. And so if the Kanban were to get lost, misplaced, anything like that, we get an email saying, hey, you better go find the Kanban for that item. It looks like it should be on order and it's not, right?
All right, thanks. Really helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony. Our next question comes from Chris.
Thanks for taking the time to chat with this. This is awesome. I've seen a fair bit of you on YouTube from the FastCap stuff, so it's great to be able to finally interact. So thanks again. My question around inventory is, we're a tyre store, so we buy and sell tyres. If we have a buy-in for a customer, maybe 1 or 4 tyres, we'll buy those in, and then there might be something happen, like maybe we lose contact with the customer. It could be our fault. The customer changes their mind and doesn't want to, buy that particular tyre. They want to do something else. Some of that stuff I buy in is non-returnable, so I end up with this inventory, especially lots of one tyre here, one tyre there. I've got about 20 or 30 of those just up in the rack, so hopefully one day I can sell them. My question is, that's inventory that's some of it's been sitting on the shelf for 12 months, taking up space and having all the waste that comes with it. What are your ideas around that?
Yes, my first thought is look upstream at why is it happening and try to solve the root cause of the problem. So why is the customer allowed to have you custom order something and then they change their mind and you're stuck with it?
Yeah, so that's actually something we were talking about in our morning meeting. So the question's half answered. But we've suggested to ourselves now that the customer must pay full price for a buy-in, whereas we usually just get it in and wait for them to come back or contact them. So maybe them paying for the stock, before we get it in. Maybe that's an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I've never custom ordered anything where they didn't expect me to pay up front or sign a contract or something like that, right? And then what are the other reasons you're getting these? I forget what you said besides.
So a customer, in a while, a couple of cases, they, by the time the tires, maybe a few days, something might happen to the car, could blow up, or they've got other repairs to do to it that they didn't foresee. So a financial sort of reason. What else could be? Just some of them just ghost you, like you don't hear. You ring and text and never hear from them again. I think if they paid for them, they'd probably pick up the phone. But yeah, so they're just some of those things, and it's just over sort of 10 years of business. I've accumulated all these bits and pieces, and I think going forward, if we get the customer to pay for them, that'll help. But you guys must have some stuff in FastCap that's just sitting there. It hasn't been doing anything.
So we've had some items, like for example, we were actually, the selfie stick that you put your phone on and take a picture. We were the first people to make a selfie stick ever.
Yeah.
Of course, there's 5 billion knockoffs of it now, and we thought we were so genius, and we ordered a whole container load of selfie sticks from China when we first came out with it. 5 years later, we realized that we were selling maybe one a month because there's 5,000 other products of it, right? So with those, we actually put them all up on eBay at like our cost, and they moved pretty quickly that way. We actually even found a guy who does like a sell your stuff on eBay thing, and had him offload a bunch of them into his inventory so that he could just slowly sell them over time, and we didn't have to have them taking up our inventory space. It's a weird thing to do, but it worked for us, And then we also have on our website, we have a scratch and dent section. And so that's very important for us if we, actually have scratch and dent items. We do returns pretty much for the life of the product for any reason, no questions asked, right? And so we try to make our products robust enough that when they do come back, they still work just fine, but they're a bit scratched up from use, right? So we give deep discounts on scratched and dent items. And so we'll use that portion of our website, and we actually do an email blast where people can sign up to get our email newsletter once a month. And if they sign up and they're on our mailing list, they'll get once a month a $5 or $10 discount code for whatever certain item we want to promote that month. So we'll do for Overstock items like that we just want to get rid of, we'll do an email blast and we'll say, hey, these are already discounted. They're our cost. We're just trying to get rid of them. On top of it, since you're one of our email blast customers, you get an extra $10 off. Move this stuff. And that helps a lot too.
All right, we'll look into that. But thanks for your time, mate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Excellent. Chris, next question is Sean. Over to you, Sean.
My question's already been answered by Tony and Chris, but I'll go with it anyway. So our main line of work, we do timber staircases, and more than half our staff are on site. So keeping their inventory up to date and up to stock falls back on them. Sometimes this ends up, going astray because they're not worried about what looks like in their van or their truck. It's more a case of just get the job done and get home. So we've had to actually, although we have certain products that we keep in the factory, we supply to them. We've engineered, tested for those products to make sure they work with our stairs. We may have to end up sending them to the local hardware store, to Bunnings, similar to your Home Depot, sending there to pick up an odd box of screws or a different brand of nail. Problem we have then is when they do a clean out or they're not using that product, it comes back to the factory and we end up with all these multiples of different fasteners and different products. Do you ever get something like that? I don't imagine you have on-site teams, but...
So we don't, but I've worked with a number of companies that do on-site installation teams and some that are very, very high-level lean companies. So I'm familiar with the struggle for sure. My first question is, your on-site installers, did they never come into the shop? Are they involved in like your morning meeting or anything like that at all? Or are they strictly They drive to the job site, do the job, go back home, all in their work.
Very, very rare that they come to the factory. They're on site nearly all the time. So we deliver to site, same way kitchens would join and get sent. So
Right.
if they need a product, it's up to them to, in their own way, to contact us and say, okay, tomorrow when you bring that job out, can you bring X, Y, Z boxes of this, that? And this is another part of the question is a Kanban system just that you can use through your phone. It's not physically a card that gets brought in, which I think was part of Tony's question. You know, if it was simple Excel or something they can use on their phone, what options do you know of for that?
Oh, so couple ideas, and I'll get more complicated as I go. But my first thought is you should be having them engage with the rest of your company in some way in a morning meeting type fashion. It could also be an afternoon meeting, but something that engages them back with everybody else in the shop who's having to supply them with stuff. Even if it's just like 5 minutes or something over Zoom or whatever interface works for you, a voice message, call, FaceTime, whatever, but having them have kind of a meeting and share what their frustrations are, get other frustrations shared, and then that gives you some sort of forum to go over each day, having a process of them being in communication. Because I always say that lack of communication is the ninth deadly sin of waste. If you're not communicating clearly, it creates all the other ways, right? And so getting them on some sort of forum like that where they're communicating on a set schedule, whether it's beginning of their shift, end of their shift, lunchtime, whatever, for 5 minutes a day, and just, you know, having to go over, hey, did you run out of anything today? That will help get their engagement. Then from there, I'd say it sounds like you need some sort of a standard process for reordering. It sounds like they're not trained on a standard operating procedure. Once you get them involved in some sort of a daily communication, you have a good way of training them that standard operating procedure, and then you can start implementing some sort of a physical Kanban card. It's hard to get it to work if they're not engaged and they're not being held accountable and they're just going to run out to the hardware store. And so, you know, I don't think it's the best answer, but one option is always change all the inventory you stock, make all your standard stuff what they can buy at the hardware store, right? That eliminates defects. If they're going to buy stuff, at least it's matched this exact SKU. They can't buy the wrong thing. You've at least tested the hardware store stuff that you know it's good enough and it works. And in a pinch, nothing's changing. You're not ending up with a defect. So that's kind of the low level solution. But better than that, get your stuff on a Kanban system. And what I've seen done, I think is pretty simple to do with a couple Google searches or AI searches, whatever you want to do. But on a Kanban card, if they have a Kanban for each installation item, you can put a QR code on the back of the Kanban. And if they pull out their phone and they scan that QR code, it'll open their email app, it'll populate the email, and it'll write in the part number. And so all they have to do is scan it and hit send. And it'll send to your purchasing manager from their email what Kanban they pulled right then. And then the purchasing person back at the shop can go through by email address at the end of the day and make sure all of those items get delivered to each job site the next day. And I think that seems like the most seamless solution in your situation is, you know, they have to keep the cards, they have to handle them. When they pull them, they have to have a spot in their truck, they put them and they keep them. When they get new stuff, they have to reset them. So you have to get them engaged and communicating to make it work. But if it does, it's a really nice system where they're pulling out bolts, they hit the Kanban, scan it, send, put it in the slot, keep working, and the next day what they need is there with no issues.
No, that'd be awesome. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sean. Over to Phil for our last scheduled question.
Hey, Lucas. Great to see you again. Thanks for giving us your time. My question that I've got for you. So we sell pneumatic control equipment, and so a lot of our stuff is repairs and maintenance, so it's not consumable type items. So we have so much variation in the quantities that we sell that it's hard to sort of determine, you know, sort of the right level. All our stuff's imported, and being in New Zealand, you know, even air freight is 4 weeks away for us. Sea freight's even further, you know, 3 to 4 months. And we seem to tend to get into the bullwhip effect. You know, we run out once and then we order a whole heap in doing that. So we use Kanban for all our, you know, consumables and that sort of stuff internally. But for our sales stuff, we're using our ERP software, and we basically have a minimum and a maximum level.
Right.
But of course, it gives us a sort of guide, but every time we seem to be reordering, we seem to be looking, is that enough? I don't know what the magic solution is, but I'd be interested in your insights to maybe some things I could look at or try differently to help us.
My first question is, how many different factories are you purchasing from in Italy?
Generally, our core business, 80% of our business comes out of one factory.
Okay. So when your ERP system triggers a purchase, someone has to sit there and they have to look at, is this enough to purchase or not? Right?
Yep.
What happens if it's not?
It sits there on the report. So at the moment, we're ordering about once a month. And we go there, and let's say we literally, after we've placed the order, we then trigger that Kanban level, then you're another month on top of that before we go there. So what I'm trying to do is get more frequent orders coming through. Obviously, the freight proportion per order goes up if we're ordering more regularly. If we order more regularly, we might order the same item, say 3 times in the month or 4 times in the month. So the volume of work, so putting away 1 box versus 2 boxes, not much difference. So for us, there's a lot of over processing with the local stuff's easy.
And so do you guys do any sort of like predictive forecasting on that stuff, or is your sales way too volatile to even be able to predict on a 6 months to year basis what certain
as I say, the majority of it's quite volatile. There's no pattern. One or two, out of that company, not so much, but another company, a few things are a bit seasonal. So we sort of know that, during winter we get the period. So we want to sort of start buying a bit more at the beginning and taper off towards the end. But for our main stuff, there's a few items, and a lot of it is low quantities, where we might stock 2 or 3, and you can sell none, and then you could sell 4, and you kind of.
And are those like high physical volume items, or are they smaller parts? There's low quantity.
Little, like solenoid valves and pneumatic fittings and that, so quite small things. So, a box could hold 1 or 10, and it takes up the same volume on the shelf. So we have the space pretty much to stock more, but obviously, we don't want to have too much tight. So our stock turn is really low, and we're now getting some information on that. My business partner just wants to we'll just buy more stock. But
I mean, it sounds not lean, but I almost think if I were in your situation, I would carry a little bit more stock of some of those lower sales volume items. And then that gives you more flexibility when you hit that Kanban card. Like say something right now, you usually carry 3 of, and when you get to 2, you reorder 2 more or something like that. If you up that to carry 10, and when you get to 8, still only reorder the 2, but you have that huge buffer. And then when you're getting to 8, that gives you that, it could be a couple months before you actually have to reorder that 2. And so you can kind of stack those up together and make your orders more bulk orders for all those smaller things, lower your freight charges by having a bigger order. And then your higher volume items, you can not have to order. So like you want to do it more often. But like you said, there's waste in having those high volume items come in every week as opposed to a bunch a month, right? So it kind of sounds like you need to try to split your SKUs into 2 divisions, high volume and low volume, and kind of raise your stock quantity on only the low volume ones. And I don't know that's the right answer, but that's, I think, what I would try in your situation.
Yeah, no worries. I really, really appreciate your thoughts on that. And Edwin just popped in there like the 3 bin system, instead of 2 bins, having multiple triggers. So, I mean, that would push us back to Kanban for that side of it.
Right.
Most of our stock is in a showroom. It's not out the back in a warehouse. So I'd be also cautious about customers because they'll just rip into bags and grab something out. And I can imagine Kanban cards disappearing and
got to like weld them shut inside a box. Customer has to get someone to come get it out for them. But no, that totally makes sense. And I mean, the benefit with very fluctuating volumes like that with the real Kanban card is like you can have a section where like we have a couple of these items that are such low volume that we want to wait till we get like a couple of them to order at once. And so we have a Kanban delivery slot and those have a specific colored dot on the Kanban card. And if it's got that dot, you don't turn it into the normal to order slot. It goes in the low volume, hold until there's enough slot. And that's a nice thing about physical cards is that makes it easy to manage versus an ERP system. Once you've waited 4 months, it's easy to miss the fact that you needed to order that, right?
Yeah.
But that's where, to me, a really simple solution like an Excel spreadsheet, and you just have a spreadsheet of low volume items. And when ERP says order it, you just copy paste it to the spreadsheet. And when you get to your, less often reordering things, you can shot a spreadsheet of everything that should get ordered. It's the same as a physical card set aside to me, right?
Hey, thanks a lot, Lucas. Really appreciate it.
So Chris, over to you for the chat room questions.
We do have a question for Lucas from Edwin.
So you mentioned that the build times are on the Kanban cards. How do you guys update that and track it? And why do you do that? And what's the importance of that?
Well, so we keep a spreadsheet with all of our build times and by initials, so we could pull out a graph for each different person. Because if Amy's really fast and Bobby's really slow, I can't look at a graph of the last 2 years and get any data when it's just up, down, up, down, up, down, right? But I can pull an Amy graph versus a Bobby graph, and I can see over time, are their times slowly going down, going up? And I can look at, is there a big change point? And in my spreadsheet, I have notes on the different dates where we made any major improvements. So I can see at that change point, what was the improvement that was made. But then the physical Kanban card itself, we have a build time on it, and it's called time to beat. And we do it for fun. Totally forget what book it's from, but where they talk about where they came in and wrote day shift and night shift, and they came and wrote the big number, how many day shift made, and night shift all of a sudden came in and wanted to beat them, right? I'm sure, I don't know why I don't remember the name of it, but
Good to Great.
Is that from Good to Great? Okay, yeah. I've read so many, I just can't place what's from what book. But so having the time on the Kanban card, it's like that. It makes it a fun competition. So basically, anytime anyone sets a record on a build, they just get to take, it's just a label maker. You just walk over to the label maker, type your initials and the time that you just set, and you stick it on the Kanban card. And you get to be like, I'm the best at that one. And then it challenges everyone else to want to come try to beat you on that, right? But then the other huge benefit is, say, I'm Lucas, I just started at FastCap, and I come in and I build this, and time to beat says 10 minutes, and it just took me 45 minutes. And I go enter it in the spreadsheet, and I look at all the times to the left of the last builds, and it's 15, 13, 16, 18. I'm like, the hell, 45? Well, now I know. Right there on the Kanban card, it's got the initials of the person who is right now the freaking best at FastCap. And I can go to them and be like, hey, here's how I did it. It took me 45 minutes. Like, teach me your ways. And it gives you the information of who to learn from.
That's amazing. I think that's because of your culture as well, where you guys are, it's not a waste of time to actually go and enter this data in, because it's about training the people and in motivating them to do better, right? And that's the whole purpose of that. Because it does take some time to be able to do that and punch that information in. But there must be value from that.
It does, but it's pretty fast. It's a spreadsheet with a back row on it. So you take your Kanban card, you dink the barcode, it takes you down to the right line item. You hold the control key and the forward arrow once, like control, forward arrow one more time. You type LH 339, wherever the date is, and 16.25 your time. Click back to the top, you're done. So it's 20 seconds after a long build. It's not a huge amount of waste, but the value we get from it is really, really great. And it's an accountability thing for training too, because if we have a defect, we can go back through who built in what order, where did the defect happen, and who needs to be retrained. And the value that provides just from that is really amazing too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lucas. That was great.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Edwin. We've got a question for Lucas from Matt Loveday.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, hi, Lucas. You've got a lot of different machines. I've seen you have the Kanban cards on the machines, so we've actually copied that. That was a great improvement. Obviously, we've got this issue where we have so many Kanban cards stacking up on a machine, and it's almost like weeks of processing. So we've got mainly lathes, right? So the parts don't tick over as fast as injection molding machines. Have you had that similar issue before, and how have you dealt with your bottlenecks on machines like that?
Of course, we've had those issues, different ways on different ones. And honestly, this is something I am like I said, I'm working on the engineering department right now, so this is one of the things I'm kind of attacking right now, and I don't necessarily have the best answers for it. But one of the things I've come up with is kind of giving certain Kanban cards priorities. So those are going to be your faster moving items. And say I already have three Kanbans stacked up on my machine, and one of these high priority ones comes in. Maybe that needs to automatically get bumped to the front of the line because I know I'm going to run through that one faster. And then the lower priority items, they're things that I don't need to stock or make as much of because they're moving a little bit slower. So I'm able to up my inventory levels a little bit on that as far as how much I have when I pull the Kanban card. And that allows me to bump other things in front of those without ever running out. So that's one thing I'm kind of playing with right now. The other is, of course, figure out how to, like, are your machines running 24/7?
One of them has the ability to, because we run brass. The other one, we're running stainless steel parts. Very difficult to run that overnight because obviously tool wear is a big issue. So yeah, maybe we could even extend the daytime operation of that. Could assist if that's where you're going. Yeah.
Anything that you can run automated overnight. Like right now, I'm looking into getting a mill tending robot to, so that when we leave, it can run another 3 hours worth of mill parts that otherwise we'd be paying someone here to run. And, even if you can't run, say, your stainless parts because of tool wear, you take that 3 hours when no one's in the shop and you have it run your easiest part. And at least that Kanban's out of there. So when you show up, you can focus on the one that needs a human operator there, right?
Yeah. You've never considered we don't want to do it, but increasing the shift to a longer shift?
We haven't really, but we haven't had the need to, I guess. We try to focus on how do we automate it to run a couple hours after we leave. And we have had it where, like, standard, we show up at 7 o'clock, but we don't really start working till 8 because we have the first 30 minutes of the day, we do our 3Sing and our improvements. The next 30 minutes, we have a morning meeting, and then 8 o'clock is when usually machines start running. But we've got people who, when we get busy with machine operators, they'll come in 10 minutes early, get the machine started up and running, and then go start their 3Sing. So we've got that extra hour at least running parts. But it is something we might consider, just having a couple operators come in to extend the shift a little bit if we needed to. But then the question when you get to that point is, when you have a machine operator, how much of the time are they actually working versus standing there while the machine does the work, right?
Yeah.
And so does it then maybe actually make more sense looking to the future of your company to invest instead in more machinery, and you get your one operator busier running more machines, but he can handle it, gives you way more possibility to expand than extending the shift. And extending the shift makes management hard, makes keeping people in line, making sure they're not producing defects, they're paying attention, they're not on their phone. Like, you want to pay a leader to stay there just because two guys are running a machine, right? Then they start screwing off. So I tend to think it maybe makes more sense to invest in more machinery, but it depends on you and your culture.
No, 100%. No, thank you very much. That's good.
We've got the last question here from Ida.
Yeah, it's about any tips or apps I can use to improve the stock take. That's one. And the second, the allocation of material. How you allocate on your system to everyone knows, like, okay, I have 300 parts, but 20 belongs to this customer, 100 from this customer, 120 for this customer. So like, okay, we only have this available, and we can take, or like, let's say, like, steal it, like for different orders who just came in.
I guess the answer to that is our 2 hours fax to truck. So we rarely have that many sitting that are pre-allocated. When we get an order, we fill it pretty much immediately. And so that order is being filled. No one else could come even take it. That's the minute we get it, we're doing it. And, if we do run through, like, every once in a while, something will go on back order, but we serve customers first come, first serve. And when we run out, if we end up having to back order because we got 3 huge orders and ran out of material for a couple of days, we do that just first come, first serve basis. But it's very, very rare. And if it does happen, we'll, immediately increase our stock level on that so that it doesn't happen again. And we'll even actually get on the phone with the customers and be like, hey, this is really unusual. Like, in the past, you've been buying 10 of these and you just ordered 100 of them, and your other store just ordered 100 last week. Like, should we be counting on this in the future? And
Yep.
communicate with the customer. I'll actually really help you with that. And then what was your first part of your question?
It was for the stock take. Do you have any like tips or apps you guys use for stock take to like improve, like to do it faster, like scanning codes, like having mapping, like where the person has to go to get all the stock take done?
The WASP system that we use, we've hooked everything up to barcodes. So like when we receive an item, we pre-print on UPS packing slips because they're free for us, our barcoded pallet label. All of our rack locations are barcoded, and all of our Kanbans are barcoded. So when inventory guy has to go stock pick, he has a list of Kanban cards that are what he needs to stock pick. He scans the barcode, and the computer system gives him first in, first out location to go get it. When he scans it in and out, everything's done with a barcode scanner, so there can't be any data entry error, and it's much faster than trying to type everything in. And that's just all stuff we've done. Like we started out with just Excel, and now we use our WASP label or some to do barcodes, but a lot of it's just been creating barcodes, and they're just a font. Like anything you type, you can turn it into a barcode and make it scannable, and that's our biggest improvement for that.
That's all the questions I had there from the group chat. Thanks again, Lucas.
Thanks, Chris. That just brings us right up to our time with Lucas as well, team. So thank you for everyone for asking them some great questions. And Lucas, thank you very much for being very respectful and taking a lot of time to answer the questions. There was a lot of detail in your answers. I've got a stack of notes, so I really appreciate your time and really appreciate the detail that you went through. There's a 3D printer printing madly behind you there, Lucas?
Yeah, a couple of them, 3 of them, all going madly.
Yeah, cool. I just bought my first one in after Christmas. There's not a room in my house that doesn't have something printed. My kids love it. My wife is now she'll admit that she loves it.
It's the next thing to be self-sustaining and be able to make something easily without like having to cut wood and do it and glue it and stuff. It's like, let me just print it out and boom, it's plastic. It's so what's going to change it, like, and it just gets easier and easier technology. So anybody can now in the household, it's like your phones. Right?
There's so much to download for free too. And then like if it breaks too, instead of having to rebuild it, you just already have the model. Let's add a couple walls, add some infill, print it again.
I was going to say on that one point, Lucas, where you said you video everything, because they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, I think a video is worth 1,000,000 pictures, right?
Yeah, you get 60 pictures a second, right? With words on top of them, yeah. But it's just so much easier. Even customers who have a question, the office comes back, and I'm like, hold on, let me just make them a 10-second video, send them this. And then, it's something different for the customer too. Like how often do you call the office and 3 minutes later you get a video explanation? But then you don't have to go back and forth 10 times.
That's hard.
I mean, it takes a lot of implementing, and it's, humans have a tendency to overcomplicate things. And so everyone tends to rely on the most complicated system that they can find because it's the best, right? And then trying to simplify that instead of starting simple. It's kind of a headache. I get it.
That's a great.
What was the main takeaway from Lucas? I'm curious.
Just the knowledge that he has around lead times and making sure that everything is reported, like graphs on how long it takes to build a part. Therefore, how long would it take for us to keep that 12 in the inventory that we need?
Yeah, no, he's got a really good handle on things. And again, he wasn't talking theory. He was, this is what we've done and this is how we're managing it. And, he talked about some of the concepts of how they were managing in China through the pandemic. We said, hey, supplier, we want this stuff. You keep this in your area, but when we want it, tell us to ship. So he had a really good, over a broad topic of questions, there's quite a varied question. And like none of it was just theory. It was all, this is what we've done, or give it a try this. So yeah.
My key takeaway was balancing what is, we all think of inventory and we try and get it down as skinny as we can, but balancing of still in prioritizing what's important for their customer, which is when they have an order, they want to be able to get their order fulfilled as soon as possible. So I really picked up about how he navigates that dichotomy between having too much inventory and not enough. And just when you find yourself thinking, should I have more inventory? Ask yourself what's best for the customer. Plus how FastCap uses spreadsheets. That was that's awesome. Yeah, using the build time spreadsheet to track individuals' build times and on certain products to see if the training's effective. Yeah,
Exactly. He does a great job of all that. It's really, really amazing. Our opinion as a company, and I'm sure he said this, is always the customer. We'll take it in the shorts any which way, but always the customer. The customer should feel no pain from us.
Paul, you know what I took away from that conversation with Lucas? Nothing to do with inventory. It's all with how he dealt with the questions. So he asked the question back with a question. And I realized how much training, how well he's trained to not just give answers, but actually investigate more into the situation. And even myself, I make this mistake of, here's the solution, here's the doing. But I'm learning, no, it's the coaching. How do I ask you the question so that you can get to that point? And he got Chris to answer his own question.
Yeah. Well, let me just tell you something. I talk to Lucas almost every day. I don't know if he told you that, but we're in communication all the time. And most of you don't know this, but I haven't been in my facility for 4 years. So he is completely, between my son, him, and my wife, they manage everything. But I talk to Lucas almost every day, and he always asks me a question, and I always say, you do whatever you think, you make the decision, it's your call, I trust you. That always putting it back, asking him, that's not by accident. I learned this from Mr. Amazawa. Stop giving the answers. Make your people figure it out, okay? That's how they grow. That's how they become confident. But it's also suppressing your ego, because whenever you're the guy with the answer, you're basically saying, I'm the smart guy in the room. No, I don't think so. It's long-term thinking.